We all want to be Justin Welsh and Chris Walker. You know what? Chances are you and I won't be. And that's okay. We still have a space in this metaverse. I say that not jokingly, like the podcast, what we're doing right now, it is the metaverse. It is people jumping into your head, listening to you, being a part of something. And I can't wait to see the SDRs who are just crushing it doing that. So as an SDR, bringing it back down, if you don't have a team and it's just you, subscribe to Riverside, start doing podcasts with your buddies, learn how to edit, get CapCut, get whatever it is, start doing it on your own, spin up a YouTube channel, do it on a budget, right? Do what you can with the money you can.
All right, welcome back to the SDR Hire podcast. If you don't know me, I'm Stefan, I'm your host. And if you're new to the channel, this is a place where SDRs and salespeople come to learn from top producing salespeople in tech sales, what it's like working there, how do you break in, what do companies look for, how to get promoted, and in general, how to be successful in tech sales. Today, we get to chat with Steve Schmidt. If you're not familiar with Steve, he's someone who's done it all. So from being a sales manager for telecommunication companies like AT&T, T-Mobile, to leading enterprise sales departments at companies like Outreach, for example. A few years ago, Steve was running a sales development agency called Tidal, which was when I started following his journey. After exiting that company, he started the business he's running today called Magnetic, where he's combining his sales development expertise with the strongest business multiplier known to mankind, which is content. So,
yes.
Steve, welcome to the SDR Hire podcast.
Man, good job. That was good. Thank you. It's been a wild 25 years in sales, and here we are. Here we are.
25 years in sales. That's so crazy. I can't even fathom, to be honest. I'm a little over 25 right now. I'm 30.
Yeah, man.
So it's weird to hear that, you have experience in sales almost as much as, or rather as much as I have in life. So it's a pleasure having you on.
Yeah. Thanks. It's, still relevant, still here, still, I would say part of my daily hygiene is just making sure that, it wouldn't matter if I'm 21 or 46. Like I need to enable myself with understanding exactly the thing where people are running to right now. And for example, with content, right now, I probably digest 5 to 6 hours of content from people who are in the YouTube space. Nice. Because I see that as the future of B2B as well as LinkedIn, right? And so I'm developing myself all the time. And, I still rip out cold calls, every couple of weeks I'll get on and still got to polish that game, right? Because that's my roots. My roots comes from cold calling. Comes from emailing before automation was a thing. So getting very creative with how to, sequence before sequencing was a thing, doing it on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. And I want to dive into all of these topics. But and like I said, I've been following you since the Tidal days. I was briefly employed back then at Lemlist, and you were reviewing Lemlist as a tool for your tool stack.
Yeah.
And that led to me following you back then. And so I remember you posting some really, really impressive revenue numbers. We're talking like 7 figures plus something like that.
It was big.
So what happened previously in your career to help you move from that telco world to tech sales, and how did you end up eventually starting Tidal?
I was angry because nobody in software would hire me, and I wanted to get out of telco. I think because of the commoditization of it, right? For me, it just wasn't that exciting to, I had this big book of, I don't know, $130 million in spend a year at AT&T, but it was the same 5 clients, right? And so whether or not I could sell them cloud services with a partnership with Oracle or not, very complex enterprise stuff. And I'm like, this isn't for me. I've never been and never will be an enterprise sales focused person. I respect it. I can go in there and crush in that game, but I'm bored to tears. Doesn't mean it's not hard. Doesn't mean anything. It's too slow for me. Too many people. I'm kind of like, dude, I'm going to sit down, look you in the face, and we're going to get some shit done right now. Yeah. And so I think looking back to that, when I decided to go to T-Mobile from AT&T, that was a hella move, right? There was years there where my peers and then my team were making well north of $500,000. I mean, and you wouldn't know that in wireless. We were selling 30, 40, 50,000 iPhones at a time. Brother, there is money in that game, and we had Salesforce, and that's it. Yeah. And Matt Millen, who is the CEO or COO at Reggie, was my VP at T-Mobile. Matt was hardcore. Matt came
Nice.
in and was talking Tony Robbins every day, and he hated me, or he liked me, hated me. Like I was the kid where he's like, this kid's a top performer. He's got, an attitude. He thinks he's good. I'm gonna put him in his place. Then when I was there, really, this is the transition point of the story. Matt said, I kept telling my manager, Dave Bezin, I was like, you tell Matt Millen, he doesn't know what he's missing out on. I should be a top leader in this company, and he doesn't know that I'm this and that. And he goes, oh, he knows. He knows. You tell him all the time. And he goes, so what he wants you to do is he wants you to fly out to Seattle for 3 days, and he wants you to shadow him. And I was like, oh, it's on. It's on. I'm like, I'm getting called up to the big leagues. And, and I'll be very frank, at that point in time, I was doing very, very well, was awarded many, many shares of stock at T-Mobile. At the time, it was $19. It was up to 160 by the time I left. And I had thousands and thousands and thousands of shares of it. Left it on the table. I'll get to that in a second. Oof. I'm sitting there begging for systems, and I go, I have found this company called Outreach. It's exactly what we need. I'm barking up every fucking C-level tree going, I'm your number one seller in all of B2B out of thousands of people. Like, trust me, trust me, trust me. Nope, nope, nope. Matt Millen's like, nope, nope, nope. Next thing I know, Matt Millen says, I'm leaving to go to Outreach. I'm like, what in the... And he's like, yep, I couldn't talk to you about it when you brought it up to me. He was in Seattle. They were in Seattle. And I was like, I'm going to work for you. I'm like, take me with you. And he's like, I can't take you with me, but if you want to apply, I can give you a positive referral. Mm-hmm. And within 3 days, I had an offer on the table. Damn. And so Mark Casaglow, another guy everybody knows, was my manager. I get off the plane in College, whatever the fuck it's called, Pennsylvania. And they had 30 SDRs in a woodshed sitting there calling on people back in a bunch of trees. Because I get off this plane and they bring the stairs up, and I'm like, holy shit, where am I? It's such a small place that they bring the stairs up to the little plane. I got out and I take a little Uber, the 2 Ubers they had in the town. And I get there, Mark constantly goes, hi, man. But he made me wait outside his office for like 40 minutes. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? I think he is. Like my ego was just right there. And I was just like, and it was like we met and I was just like, this guy's good. And he was closing deals. He knows this. And he did this on purpose, I think. And I'll end the story here with the transition is I was sitting there and he was talking about money. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to crush it. And he's like, oh yeah, man, you going to crush it? And I think he had his commission statement up on purpose. It was $38,000 for the previous month. And he kind of closed his computer. And I was like, I want that commission check. And I sold $138,000 my first month. That's hard to do in SaaS.
Yeah.
And then I sold 110,000, then 60,000. I was like, what is happening? My numbers keep going down. And so it just got harder and harder. I was an alcoholic. It was harder because I was drinking during the day, during work. And eventually what that led to is going back to T-Mobile because it was an easier place to kind of be an alcoholic, working remote, not having to be on demos eight times a day. And that led to kind of the demise of, myself in that form of ending up in South Dakota somehow. I always joke that I was drunk enough and messed up enough on drugs and alcohol to end up back in South Dakota where I was born. And that's where I met my wife, who is my ex-wife, my partner, and my future wife. Go figure that one out. Shit got really hard. When I went into entrepreneurship, title grew really fast, 0 to 5 million in signed revenue. In the first 16 months, we had a company who came along and wanted to buy us. They flirted for about 5 months. I pulled out at the very end, and there was a private equity firm that came in. They wanted to buy us. And they said, you can't be the CEO anymore. You'll be the CRO, and you'll have 33% ownership of the company, but we have to fire half the people. And I said, no, can't do that. We'll take the deal with Company B. Yeah. Company B was the biggest bunch of fuck ups in the world. I wasn't, the best CEO either, but you put a bunch of people together who aren't really sure about what they're doing and a bunch of money that was supposed to show up in the bank that never did. And it becomes a problem. Yeah. And so I won't go into any detail other than my life completely fucking fell apart the next 6 months. And I went through a divorce, went through Chapter 13 bankruptcy, started at 0 at age 46. But when I did that, I also created Magnetic in the basement by just sitting there and obsessing over this thing. Because I wasn't going to go back to drugs and alcohol. And I didn't have a lot of positive things in my life at the time. So I poured all my energy into Magnetic, cranked it up to about 60K in revenue within 3 months. Here we are, 14 months later. Just rolled out a software product. Life's beautiful. We're going to get married again, Melissa and I, but for right now, she's helping in the business on the back end, getting operations tight. So life is great, man. Sorry, that was really long. You can edit that down.
No, I'm not gonna touch it. It was because it was pure and it was, you being yourself. And I really appreciate that. Usually when people come on, they put this, I think subconsciously they put their best face forward.
I used to do
And
that too. I
yeah,
get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a
It
normal
doesn't
thing.
work long term. Trust me.
I bet. I mean, I know how I felt doing my first podcast episode, how I feel today.
Yeah.
And so just
Lots of
being
growth there, right?
100%, because
Yeah.
it makes me, it exposes me to an extent at least. And then I just, and I really appreciate you sharing that. I can imagine that saying those things, obviously it's probably not the first time. And I think I actually heard you speak about those things in other podcast episodes as well. But
Yeah.
it probably isn't the easiest thing to recollect and to say.
No.
So thank you. Thanks for
Sucks,
sharing.
man. I'd sitting there with all these envelopes around you and kind of being like, man, like I fucked up.
Mm. Yeah.
And all the things go through your head, right? Trust me, like the self-doubt, the shame, the anger. Like this was supposed to be $7 million and it's negative 780,000. How did this happen?
Yeah.
And I would challenge anybody in this call to say like, yeah, go ahead. Like go ahead and go through that. And life will punch you in the face on both sides, slap you, pour some cold water and make you wake up and go, now what? Now what? And all the cold call advice in the world and all these things all of a sudden became very empty to me and callous because I was like, this isn't doing it for me. So I had to go down a path personally where like my 6 hours a day of content at 1.75x speed became therapists, people figuring out ego and really digging into the bottom of this thing where I said, if I'm going to create a brand, there's one thing I want to lead with it. And I have to do this myself, which is part of being magnetic is be your fucking self.
Yeah.
And if people don't like it, either change yourself because you're doing something wrong, or you say, I'm really comfortable with that self and that's okay. And in business, I'm going to be myself. And those people who don't like it will not like it anyways. And those people who do can magnetically now get closer to me.
Yes.
And so that's been the pulse of it the whole time. And man, it's been lit. We've got 3 to 5 customers renewed after a year. Here we are. And let's talk about SDRs though, because I think that there's a lot of things with content that SDRs are doing that's really impressive. And I think there's a lot of SDRs crushing it with content.
Agreed. And speaking of magnetic, can you give me a rundown? Like what is magnetic? What do you do with your clients?
Magnetic is a content development agency. So ghostwriting for executives, sales leaders. And we're also a messaging company. So we're going to create your content on LinkedIn, and that's going to be text or video. And then we're going to also connect you 500 people a month. We supply that data. It's just connecting on LinkedIn into your ICP, right? Males are connecting at 20 to 50%, females 30 to 70%. And then we're seeing about 2.1 of those people who they can, total TAM, right? 500 people a month. We're seeing 2.1 and positive, we call positive is like, I want to meet with you. I want more information. And so we're really seeing that weave of the back end, not just the content, because you got to have both. Like I see a lot of people say content. I see a lot of people say, well, outbound. I'm like, do both all the time. And so we bundle that into a nice little product, $2,500 a month. If you're for example, you could say, oh, Magnetic's going to write my posts. They're going to do video and they're going to connect me into my ICP. All I got to do is respond by messages and be a good tenant and community member on LinkedIn. $2,500 a month gets you started. We'll write your newsletters and do 22 video posts a month for $7,000. So like it goes up if you want to, but those people who want to get started, who don't want to outsource it to an SDR agency, no, nothing against them, but it's not what we do, kind of what we do. But content is the big game changer, right? Because Stefan, I think the biggest thing is everybody wants to be the person with 500 or 600 likes. We all want to be Justin Walsh and Chris Walker. You know what? Chances are you and I won't be. And that's okay. We still have a space in this metaverse.
Yep.
And I say that not jokingly, like the podcast, what we're doing right now, it is the metaverse. It is people jumping into your head, listening to you, being a part of something. listening to stories. We've been doing this for ages. We don't need goggles on our fucking eyeballs. We're right here. And I think that is the transformation where those people who are compelling, who people want to be around, who have a story to tell, will crush it with video. And they're going to do it once a day. They're going to develop channels. They're going to have podcasts. They're going to have thought leaders on, and they're going to be like the news channel for that problem. And I can't wait to see the SDRs who are just crushing it doing that.
Agreed, man. SDRs, like I've seen a lot of sales reps, SDRs, account executives, sales leadership, not so much. Maybe like SDR managers, creating content. There's a few people who are like executives who are just crushing it with content. But those that have their ICPs on LinkedIn and cranking out content on LinkedIn are seeing crazy amounts of returns that are like multiplicatory, not it's not additive. It's like X amount of times.
The compounding benefits are insane.
Exactly. And speaking of LinkedIn, so 33,000 LinkedIn followers, 8,000 plus weekly newsletter subscribers.
Yep.
You've managed to generate over 6 million in revenue in the last 2.5 years.
Yep.
And so you have a podcast as well. So typical salespeople are not really famous for their content, right?
Yeah.
So how does a sales leader like yourself go from cold calling, right, and doing manual emails to running a content-led agency?
Yeah. Here's what I would say. There's 5 things you could do.
Right.
And I just did one of them, right? Get really good at this. There's 5 things you can do. Video, right? 3, 2, people are visual. And they're going to remember this for some reason way more than 5 things. And so get really good on video at saying there's 5 things. Get really good at just knowing where you're going, because people are going to go in this world, and LinkedIn is bringing the video feed in, right? It's already in beta, where the video feed is going to be the primary feed for a lot of people. It's going to be like shorts. It's going to be like, Instagram Reels. Like a lot of people are just going to go to that one and say, that's the feed I want to see. So get good at it. Number 2, just be as simple as possible. Go out and create a YouTube page now. And pay somebody and go, I need 5 things on my YouTube page. I need client testimonials. I need frequently asked questions. I need what are we? What do we do? I need thought leaders on the problem, and I need podcasts. And then I'm going to neatly organize them and make thumbnails that are great. You can watch a Mr. Beast YouTube video on how to do that perfectly with the sizing of the text and how to do it. You can do it in PowerPoint or Canva. And then you say, podcast, frequently asked questions, da-da-da. And now it's not just YouTube. You now are creating SEO rich content. The other day, Stefan, and another example would be, any SDR can start a newsletter, right? Everybody's got a newsletter right now, right? So everybody also is trying to write songs. Everybody's also trying to get cooking shows. So yes, everybody's doing everything all the time. But that newsletter, I said, watch, I'm going to call my shot. I'm going to write this newsletter and include the phrase and keyword, how to write a new LinkedIn newsletter 7 times. And it's going to start to show up on the first page of Google within 2 weeks. And it did. And I feel like it falls on deaf ears. I'm like, you guys, it's not just about the post that gets seen. It's about where does it live, so it can get unearthed by everybody else who didn't see it in your LinkedIn feed. Like, because most people don't. And the internet's a big thing. And why not get off LinkedIn and onto Google? That's my whole point of a newsletter. That's my whole point of video content, is to get SEO rich so people can start to find you instead of you having to hump the phones all day. Because as much as we love that, and as much as we can crush that or whatever, like we're not gonna say it's our most favorite thing to do. Like, we would rather have people coming inbound saying, I'd love to work with you. I'd love to work with you. I love seeing your content. I've been following you for 6 months. You seem to get it. Man, I think just like you do. And the third thing, I'm kind of going through these in a weird way. Let's skip 3. The third thing is you have to pick the problem where they are. And so where you're doing video content, what I've learned by a lot of mistakes is, we talk. People don't want that. They want to come into a video that says, you're probably wondering, how the fuck am I going to get revenue? I don't want to spend a lot of money on an outsource SDR agency. I've been burned by a few. I also don't want to hire an SDR because I can't afford it yet. I'm not sure if I'm there. And so you ended up here. Like, that's what you got to do, is kind of get them to go, you get me. Now what? How are you going to solve my problem? And you go, hold on, we're not going to talk about that yet. We have to keep digging into the problem. And so now in that video, you have to say more, and you have to say like, and you're probably like this, and you probably have tried LinkedIn and found that it didn't work for you, and you were probably inconsistent. And they're like, yeah,
Mhm.
you probably hired a ghostwriter, offshore, and it didn't work because it didn't all the things that, and we have a solution for that. Because if they get there, then they want the solution. If they fall off before that, they're not the fit anyways.
Yeah.
So the fourth piece would be what everybody's going to tell you is just do it. Just get a camera. And it's very easy. And I'm going to go to 5, which is double click on YouTube. Anything you want to know that you can't do today, go to YouTube. How do I set up a video? What camera should I buy? How do I set the camera up? How do I make a podcast studio that would look just like this person's on YouTube? Step-by-step instructions, the exact same equipment, anybody can do it. The only limiting factor is you. It's you.
Yeah. So, Steve, all of these things are easier probably for you and I who are kind of entrepreneurial in our mindsets or, something like that. How can an SDR
Mm,
do something like that? Obviously, you're totally right.
yeah.
An SDR can go to YouTube, can, whip up a room with like $200 and there it is, right? But, you know, where does an SDR find motivation as
Yeah.
well as buy-in from their leaders who are going to be like, oh, you're not spending 6 hours dialing and like, pounding the phone. So,
Yeah.
how does an SDR even
Good
think through
question.
those things?
It's a really good question. I think about those bigger companies too who have control over their, what is said on social media. So this is always a delicate subject. And so my advice isn't the most popular. I would say don't work for that company.
Mm,
If that's who you want to be, just profile the company and say that's not what they want. Therefore, I should not go work there. Now, if you're already there and you go, now I want to do it, and they're not subscribing to me, I would say you got 2 options. Number 1 is the hard one to do. Everybody can get a side hustle. Doing it and still balancing your normal job is very, very hard,
yep.
very distracting. Or number 2, you could say like, hey, I want to do this or else, right? And then you got to go find that place or create it. And so don't blame the place you're at for not doing it. Go do it or find a place that does it. Because the second you realize this is a profit game and the people who run your company are trying to make money and they really don't care about the mission as much, mostly. They do, but they have to make money to care about the mission.
That's right.
You'll understand that they don't care how you do it. They just want the results. And so if you said, I want to do it and I want the support, and I know, and that's where I can look anybody in the face, Stefan, and say, I know I could spin up a company today, any idea, and make $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Not in net profit, but I'm saying in top line
No, no,
revenue.
no.
Because
Understood.
you know the systems, right? And so once you know the systems and you update them frequently, you own the airwaves because nobody in B2B is doing this. Nobody. I mean, sure, some people, barely anybody. If 1% of the people post on LinkedIn a day, less than 10% of those people are doing video. So you start to do that math and you go, man, when I'm feeling kind of bummed out because I only got 7 likes on that video, I just go, keep going, keep going,
Yeah.
keep going,
Yeah. Yeah.
keep going.
It's going to be worth it. I love
Yeah.
that. So, Steve, you've been, I listen to your podcast from time to time, and I know that you interviewed Katie recently, Kevin Dorsey. You've spoken with Chris Walker, the former
Yeah.
CEO of Refine Labs. You had Megan Bowen,
Yeah.
who's the current CEO. So, what are you learning
Yeah.
from interactions with these sales and GTM leaders?
Yeah, those are 3 really unique ones to bring up, right? Because if you look at it, like you could say, well, they're all influenced. No, they're all very different, right? So
Mm,
you look at KD, who's got a great personal brand, has 10 years in the game plus,
yeah.
doesn't have outsourced content, does it on his iPhone, hacks at it, whatever, hires content teams to help break his stuff out, works with Pavilion. Like KD's got his game dialed in and he would tell you like, that's just it. It's kind of sloppy. Like I'm going to use ChatGPT to form my thoughts. I'm going to put my dirt back on top of it and it's going to be good. And then you got Megan, who is for the first time really committing to daily content. And she's got a way different flavor than Chris did. And so now her struggle is how do I, as the CEO of Refine Labs, have a unique voice that is not Chris Walker, that is okay not being Chris Walker. And then you got Chris Walker, right? Who's everybody's favorite. Like, and I would say the formula is not hard. And I'm going to be very honest here. Good looking person, right? Number 1, talks at a very high level, and makes it sound sexy, right? And number three, he always knows to identify the problem, the villain, and the hero. And I want you to pay attention to that because most of us don't do that in our posts. We're all worried about the hook. We're not worried about what is the problem, what is the solution, and how do I tell that in a story? And I think Chris does that so well that people really don't pay attention enough to how well he's doing that to get people to just nod their heads. And I think those three people are very different, right? And so Chris, and all three, by the way, do all their own content, meaning they write their own posts. And so that's unique, meaning like pay attention, like Magnetic doesn't write their stuff. Nobody does. Magnetic is for the CEO who goes, I either don't have time or I need to be that thought leader, right? And so I look at those three people and go, well, nobody really has a system. They have teams. We have teams. So I have a team. I have a video editor. I have a writer. I have a virtual assistant. We have 3 more people on operations in the back end. So you have teams, but you can still write your own posts. Truth be told, I haven't written any of my posts for the last 6 months. I'm going to start again. You'll see it this week. And it's always experimenting for me. Like, can somebody write my stuff better than me? If they can't, we go back to me, right? And so like a lot of these influencers are people who are influential, constantly dabble in that space, but they invested enough where KD has over 900 pieces of video out on the internet. Like John Barrows has a YouTube page with 10,000 subscribers. Sam McKenna, same deal. Like go down the list. These people have teams and teams of people. So as an SDR, bringing it back down, if you don't have a team and it's just you, subscribe to Riverside.
Yeah.
Start doing podcasts with your buddies, learn how to edit, get CapCut, get whatever it is, start doing it on your own, spin up a YouTube channel, do it on a budget, right? Do what you can with the money you can. I have a budget because it's what our company does.
Of course.
In a year, I want to have 2 video editors just for me. And I want to, we're going to be launching workshops and we're just planning our first one in Minneapolis and then Austin. So we're going to be doing a lot of content, walking around with live people and live podcasts. And dude, we're getting ready to charge this shit up, and make some noise. And so for me, I mean, honestly, if I'm an SDR, you want to know what I would do? I'd go hire a team. I'd double down on myself and say, I'm going to do my work as an SDR. Plus I'm going to go hire this content team and I'm just going to fucking invest in myself. Every dollar I make goes back into me. Me. Selfish. And you develop that and just become the biggest deal in your space within a year or don't, that's the other option.
It's interesting because so far we've had a typical career in tech sales would be, let's say, SDR, account executive, potential, sales director, leadership, right? And then potentially head, VP, director, CRO, right? Now we have content in the play. And I think content has always been in the play, but I think people are realizing now that content is potentially a career step in on its own.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really love what you're saying here with just investing in themselves, right? But most SDRs, at least that I know of, don't think like that. They're like, oh, I'm going to make my sales dollars. I'm going to, get some commissions. I might become an account executive. I don't really have the time to acquire these skills.
Yep.
I'm becoming more of a small company than I am an individual contributor. What is my company going to say? And I love your advice there. Like if you're really in a company that can't support you or even would detract you from the thing that you want to learn and do, then like jump ship, switch companies. But this is very precious, and I wish I had that kind of advice given to me when I was a young SDR, because I would have probably done those things myself.
Well, I can tell you the mindset is, a guy I really like came to work here, very, very short tenure, right? He went out and opened his own thing, which is great, but a lot of it's skill, like in will. You got to be willing to do it. And even with our content team and people that we could produce, that individual never took advantage of it, right? And so, and you work for a company that does it. And so I'm kind of like, well, now I know for a fact that there's 2 ways to think about this. The one is, and you're going to know which one you are. So if you're listening right now, you're one of 2 people. You are just another SDR. Sorry, you are. we throw you into you're an expense pile. You kind of hit your numbers, you kind of don't, you kind of bitch about everything. Nothing's ever fair. It's always too hard. Or you're the SDR who goes, I have a positive attitude. I can't control my situation, but I'm going to put my head down and make the most I can on today and work my ass off. And that person will not fail in life at all. Number one, they're not blaming anybody else for their problems. Number two, they're taking ownership. And number three, no matter what, they're going to be successful. So they got to get out of the mindset of like, what is this company going to think? This company, like, you signed up to work there. So like, if you sign a contract that says you can't do it and you want to break it, sorry, that's on you. So I went to work for myself because typical, like I didn't want to work for anybody else. I didn't want to work for anybody, not Matt Millen, not anybody, because I knew more than they did about the thing. And that's bold, about the things that mattered to me, which was content. Not saying I know more than other things in life about them, but I was like, you guys don't see something I do here. And it's because you don't know it and it scares you. And when people aren't comfortable getting on video and they aren't comfortable being on social media, they don't like it. And they have a certain edge towards it and a vibe. And those people are still making money. And so I'm like, cool. But I don't sit there and say what you're doing is stupid and what you're doing is a waste of time. It's just different, right? So when I say everybody should be producing content, Stefan, I mean it. But just because you don't doesn't mean you're not going to make money. It just means I'm going to go get your customers because my content's going to be there that wouldn't just be so loyal to you. And I'll probably go get some of your loyal customers because I know in my content, I'm going to angle at you if you're a competitor and start to chisel away at your weaknesses in my post. Content is a weapon. Stop being so damn nice.
Love this so much. I'm just looking at my questions, and one of the questions is, it might happen, Steve, that some of your contacts from the tech sales world question the methods that you're using at Magnetic. And so what would you tell them? And I think you kind of answered this, but why is Magnetic, right, going to be successful? What are these people missing out on? Why does content multiply things in a way it does, right? And why do people not understand that? What are your thoughts?
It's like anything in life. It's black and white. People cannot sit in the middle on anything and just say, I don't know, I should try it. Instead, we have a stance and we have a natural bias. And for whatever reason, right, it's there. And so most of the people you see doing content, if you really went back and looked at their past, they're going to be people who majored in theater, communication, speaking, politics, right? And so it's very comfortable for them.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you can't go get a bunch of customers with paid ads. What I would say is pay attention to the one thing that's the biggest differentiator. Nobody talks about this as much as they should. By getting the right people as customers with content, you're getting way better revenue than you are with paid ads. Paid ads, you're buying commoditized, price down revenue. Content, they're believing in you, and they're going to give you some grace to do your thing, right? Because they've been following your content. Now, I will caveat this. You better fucking show up, because if you say you do this stuff in your content, you got a bunch of clients who are like, hey, this doesn't work. You're screwed, right? And I've had one or two people tell me that in the past. And I'm just like, oh, that's tough to hear. And you're probably right, But for the most part, when you run a business, and if your goal is to get into your own income set, I would tell you that I'm saying everything here, and I'm kind of a fuck up. If you look at my past, like nobody would want to live through my last 18 months, but I'm sitting here building a company that's going to be about 2.5 million in the next 5 years, slowly building this thing with content. So you can do whatever you want, but I doubt you're going to want to be an SDR forever. So if you want to be an AE, then go be an AE. If you want to create content and just see where it takes you, I would choose that. Because you can be an AE, you can be whatever you want, you just still do it with content. You lead it with content.
I'm going to give I think a very good example of actually an AE who is simply crushing the game of content. Maybe you know this guy, Brian Lavana. He is, I think he's an account executive at Gong. There's a bunch of people.
Yeah, Brian's great.
And his newsletter is amazing. I'm actually like shouting him out here so I can maybe get him on the podcast as well. But basically, that guy is just an amazing example of how you can combine, amazing career as an account executive, as a seller at a big tech company, and
Yep.
still create a shitload of content that is really promoting yourself
And he's
and creating a
authentic.
brand. Exactly. And I enjoy I save good posts all the time when I
Hey,
see
you
it,
just
right?
picked up on a trend, right? You just went back to the first part of the podcast. Gong knows how to hire SDRs who can write content.
Oh, hell yeah.
Sarah
Hell
Brazier
yeah.
wrote the model for that.
Yeah. Yeah,
She
exactly.
opened that door for everybody there.
So sorry, I didn't hear you. Who did?
Sarah Brazier,
Oh,
Brazier. Yeah, Sarah's bomb. Yeah, she's good.
amazing. I mean, she creates killer content
She
even
sold me
today.
Gong on LinkedIn 2.5 years ago.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
And I mean, if you think about it, there are so many other tools that are way cheaper than Gong that are potentially doing the same things, right? One way or another. But that content game is what's making a difference. And because people are talking about it, they're everywhere. And I
hmm
remember like 2.5 years, there was far less content on LinkedIn. And so
yeah.
like Gong
Gong was
was
everywhere.
everywhere. I felt like that for Lemlist as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are the people there too, right? Now, I would say the interesting part is it'd be interesting to see Lemlist, like, are they doing as well now that they've had a couple people leave who were doing content? I don't know, and I don't know if you're comfortable answering that, but like that'd be a good question.
That is a good question. Well, from what I could tell, I follow Guillaume, the CEO. It seems that the company is growing. It seems that they are actually creating a ton of content, but not in the same way they used to. And they're growing. I mean, they have like 5-ish products, I think, and they have grown. I'm not sure, like 20 something plus million ARR, which is
That's
like,
great, man.
they're doing pretty well. But they have changed their strategy, especially compared to that period. Like they were just amassing huge numbers of impressions on LinkedIn, and they were really getting a lot of customers.
Yep.
Today, they're doing other things, right?
Yeah.
I'm not really in that ecosystem anymore, so I don't consume their content
That's
that
so
much,
I mean, I will say that space
right? Oh, crazy.
is just crazy. And so like even to stand out in that space right now,
Yeah,
I think is really I mean, I use Apollo and I'm always use it because I'm like, well, I mean,
yeah, same.
I also don't know what else I'd do because there's so much change happening that I feel like at least with Apollo, I know kind of where they're headed. And
Yeah,
I feel like if I went with any one of those other ones, suddenly they're this company. And I will say, like, as an SDR, something you guys need to be aware of and listen very closely. And when people say, oh, the bots aren't coming, they're fucking here, dude. They're everywhere. Reggie is selling a bot right now for 5K a
hmm
month. Now you can auto enroll your ICP, have it, do machine learning responses. It's really good. And
Response.
so
I didn't know
when
that.
you say, why
Really?
would I get good at content? I'd say, because you don't have a fucking choice.
Mm,
Everything else is going to be done for you.
mm,
And so what is the one thing that you can do that can't be automated?
yeah,
Content.
true,
Power
true.
dialers. They're all coming. They're coming for your jobs. I guarantee you. People say they aren't. I'm calling bullshit because I have
Mm,
conversations with CEOs all the time. They want this tech bad. They also know it's not
wow.
quite ready yet.
Yeah, it's gonna be a while, but I agree with you. I think it's coming. It's just the question of how quickly it will be here.
It's
Is it gonna
here.
be
I'm using it right now. Yeah. I mean, our magnetic
Reggie?
managed messaging is meant to beat Reggie. I mean, we released
Yeah,
that thing just to kind of tell them where to go. Like 2,500
nice.
bucks a month, and we'll do your content. You're charging 5 grand just to do what we do for 2,500, and you're not even getting them content.
hmm
And so to me, that's kind of like this little guy going, okay, like go ahead. Because at the end of the day, like all you're doing is emailing people who mostly don't respond to you.
Yeah, that's right.
Why are we so obsessed with these platforms?
To your point, I interviewed the CEO of a company called Salesforge,
Okay.
and Salesforge is basically this email outreach tool that, like, literally he's sending 6,000 emails per day without burning domains, right? He has everything, like the tool is pretty much set on, you know, automatically creating new domains, et cetera, et cetera. So you can basically afford to burn those domains and still
Yep.
send those
They're
volumes
doing that with
with
numbers now too, right? Phone numbers.
phone numbers. I don't know if like they're currently doing just email, at least those guys. But are
Okay.
there? Do you know of any tools that are like doing?
Warming up phone numbers. I've heard rumors, but like that seems to be like a necessary thing right now. I mean, power
Yeah,
dialing, there's
yeah,
so much debate on whether to do it or not. I would just say like people ask me my stance on it all the time. I'm like,
Mm,
I don't know. It depends. It just depends. Like I for one, am not going to sit and dial one at a time for magnetic ever. I dial once a month, man. And it's like, I just load up 2,000 numbers and sit there for 4 hours and just play music and just go, all right, let's see who's answering,
nice,
because that's what
nice.
works for me. Right. And so if I had an SDR who could sit there and call for me all day,
Mm,
man my DMs, hint, hint to anybody listening, like really get good at content, have content that's, done for you by your company. Like, hey, I'm all about it.
yeah,
It's just, you got to
yeah.
be willing to, I would say, like, I'm pretty fun to work with. I'm also hella demanding, meaning like, I'm not just going to show up and be like, hey, did you get that done? It's like, no, we're on a fucking mission. So if you want to be on a mission at warp speed, then, hit me up in the DMs. Like, I
Steve,
pay pretty well.
is that a job opening?
It's always, I always say, we always have a job opening. And I would view it
Nice.
more as like, if you want to be an apprentice that's super well paid and learn what I do so I can teach you how to open your own agency, I'll be the first one to invest in you. I'll teach you
Beautiful.
everything I know and you can go open your own thing, but you got to be willing to kind of eat shit for a year,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's
And
not like you're going to walk in and be like, oh, this is great. This is so easy. Like, you're going to have to learn a lot of stuff.
that's fair. And I mean, where can you actually find somebody who's going to pay you to learn and to like make mistakes? That's just,
It doesn't happen. It's
yeah,
also a
exactly.
startup, so it's unstable. Like, everything's kind of rocky. And so I'd say, like, if you're willing to ride I mean, we
Yeah.
finally, have a little bit of runway. And so it's like nice to
Mm,
be able to think about what we need.
mm,
And we may,
exactly.
with the shift here with the company, I think we'll seek out additional investment now that, I mean, that's the funny thing. And I would tell SDRs, like, listen to this story. Like, and if you want to know, like, does it work? Everything works. Like, I walked into Caribou Coffee in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and
Mm,
I'm like, I need some money and I don't know how to go raise VC. So I called the one person I know who would have that amount of money, who did invest, and we met two more times, and he wrote a check, right? And so I said, hey, I'm an investor. Like, I know how to raise money now. And so I said, let's go do it
mm,
again. And so, like, for me, I know now I can feel the runway, that because we have a software product. That's it. If we didn't,
yep.
nobody's going to give you money to have a services agency,
Yeah.
because of your people's your product. So now that we have software running it, we're going to get enough runway there where those people who we want to hire, we can hire when we want to, because we just justify it and go, okay, instead of burning
Mm.
our own cash, let's build that into the budget and go set some KPIs and go kick some ass.
You sound like you would rather burn investor money than your own money.
Fuck
And
yeah. Because I burned all of my money. It's gone. No. I mean, and on top of it, I invested 380K of my own money to start Title. So, like, it wasn't just the money Title made, it was my personal money. So, like,
yeah,
I just don't want to
shit.
spend the company money on it anymore. Because when you run an agency, you're also, you might be making, I mean, we are a 54% margin shop, but it doesn't mean that works out perfectly every month. Like, shit
Yeah,
happens,
that's
right?
right.
So,
Yeah,
like, are we crushing it yet? No. Like, are we going to be crushing it? Yes, we will. We will be
nice.
crushing it and making lots of money. And again, if you want to be that SDR, hit me up.
That's impressive. So I think I read 40 companies at 2,500 a month using
Yeah.
your software
Yeah.
in the next like 9 months by the end of 2024, right?
Yeah.
What's the longer vision?
Longer vision is a couple things. Glad you asked. Is to get about 100 customers on that platform, and just that's it. Like, that's it. No more. That's a steady $1.5 million business, right? That's a really good book, and it will grow, right? So probably grow by about 20 to 30% and attrit a little bit. So it's a good $2 million agency. Once you have a media company, you can do anything. So at that
Agreed.
point, we'll probably really dive deep into the podcast world. And I'd like to open the first B2B label where I
Uh-huh.
sign people, and we do all of their podcasts and production and outbound, and we're taking 20 to 30% of their total revenue. So we're essentially investing into them as their company. We're getting an equity stake
Yeah, yeah.
in their company. So we're going to open that incubator, and
Love
then,
that.
start taking bets and get 5, 10, 20 companies that we're all investing into. And a couple of those will pop, and I'll look back at 2023 and say,
Worth it.
all worth it, man.
Yeah. Amazing. This is beautiful. And I think we can wrap it up here. I have a few more like rapid fire questions for you, but this is just a beautiful thought. And to your point, like in one of my previous moments in my career, I'm like compared to you, I'm very young in my both entrepreneurial and sales career, but I realized really quickly that, how should I put it? Sales in on itself doesn't scale. Media
Mhm.
does. And I just realized whatever I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be doing some kind of personal branding, some kind of presence, some kind of media
Yeah.
that because whatever I launch as an entrepreneur later, everything can fail, but the media just compounds. And like
Yeah.
if I open another social media account somewhere else, like I'll have audience there
Yep.
because like people follow the person.
Yep.
And so that was just a no-brainer. And that's what I'm doing here with this podcast. Currently it's
Yeah.
ideally it's an engine for SDR hire and helping companies get
What's
in
your
front of.
goal? What do you want to do?
Huh. I don't usually get asked questions like these. So my goal is to get to about $500,000 in revenue and just prove that this model works. Is it going to be 250? Is it going to be a million? I don't know, but like the goal is to like prove that this model of hiring remote salespeople works,
Yeah.
and there is consistent demand for SDRs, and
Yeah.
that I can actually deliver that service to companies. But that's just the goal. And also like the goal is also to compound my skills in the back end,
Yeah.
although this sounds like fluffy and bullshit, but it actually is, because I'm learning by doing this. I'm learning what I'm
You know what
doing,
you should
right?
do? You
What?
should open up a YouTube channel and document your journey
Mm,
on how to go from SDR to entrepreneur
mm,
and get people following you who are SDRs and then you're going to develop a 3-tier course. My community is $99 a month. You get a weekly newsletter that's just for you and a Slack channel. Your next one is, 40 minutes with
fi-
me. It's $4.99. And then you go to the gold standard and then you're getting people who are not only coming to you, you're helping them transition
mm,
into whatever that next thing is as well, because that's part of what you're doing now. That'd be really good.
sure. Funny you should mention all of those things. So I have a community. It's a paid community.
How many
Yeah,
members?
very small. And I just launched the community. So no paying members right now for the community itself, because I ran cohorts for SDRs and I coached them up for free, and then I would place them with companies. But then I just realized their buy-in isn't as strong if they're not paying for it. And so that's why I
Yeah.
started charging for these for
Good.
access to the community.
Yeah.
And I like this podcast is actually being run on YouTube as well as Spotify, Apple, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of already running that play, not that sophisticated, but going there.
You're
And I
doing it,
like your
man.
idea.
You're doing it and you're having fun. I can tell. That's great.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
super fun. It's super
Yeah.
fun. I wish I was making probably more stable money that I can kind of afford to pay more people to get a bigger team. But I think that's gonna come over
Don't think it
time.
will come. No, it will come. And it's already
Yeah.
here and you're doing it. So I think
Well, thanks
just
for
what I
asking.
love hearing about it is it's just planning, right? Like in 6 months, like you'll get punched in the face on the way there, but like, what are you going to do? Who are you going to hire? And I look at this business like, man, I'm not going to make the same mistakes I made the first time. And I'm going to build a business and a legacy and have some fun, And I want my kids to work here when they want to when they're 18. And I've got 3 teenagers, it's just like,
It's beautiful.
let's fucking go, man. Let's go.
That's so good. All right. Okay, we've got like a couple more minutes if you
Okay.
have the time. So rapid fire questions real quick. So in your mind, best SDR or tech sales creator to follow?
Best SDR to follow. I mean, I like Elliot Garcia. Like,
Nice.
I just think Elliot's just fun. He's himself. He's authentic. He's building the brand. He's in his early stage. I like that guy a lot. So I'm just going to say Elliot, give him some love.
Love it. Your favorite outbound channel?
Outbound channel. Okay. My favorite outbound channel, without a doubt, it's changed. It used to be the phone. It's email.
Oh,
I've gotten
nice.
very good at email. So it's my favorite because it scales and it's cheap and it can be really effective if you're good at it.
I love it. Okay. Speaking of email, so what is your, well, I usually ask whether you can choose, what is your favorite cold call opener or a
Yeah.
cold email opener?
My favorite cold call opener would be the same as my email opener, and it would be developed from 3P. And it would address the problem, and it would just say, "Hey, Stefan, this is Steve Schmidt. The reason I called today is I work with CEOs just like you who have started their own agencies who are looking to get to 500,000 and aren't quite sure if they're going to get there or not." Does that sound like something you've been thinking about, Stefan?
Nice. Nice. We could even play it out. Yeah, sure.
Cool. Yeah, I heard
That's
you
it.
on Steve Schmidt's podcast. I was doing some research and it sounds like you're poised to get there. What are you doing
Oh,
right now to make sure you're getting there?
100%.
What
I'm
happens
putting
if
in
you
the work.
don't get there?
To be
What would
honest,
change if you got there sooner?
that would be fucking amazing.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
See?
Dude, this is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's positioning. You lead with the problem and then give them some relevance and say, I also work with people like that. Do you want to be like them? Just tell me no if you don't. You know?
Yeah, fair. Fair. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I coach my SDRs in the community as well, which is like I I I just hate when people don't lead with the problem. I'm a better copywriter, to be honest, than I am, let's say, a cold caller.
Mhm.
And that's the way I write copy, for example. Like I only focus on the problem first.
Yeah.
And I pound that problem really, really hard and go as deep
Yeah.
as
You live
possible
in it with
with
them, right? You just say the words they're saying, think what they're thinking.
exactly. Like even in the courses that I run, like I have a course just to find the ICP's pain points where they are saying them, right?
Yes,
Just
in
go to
their
fucking
words.
exactly. And then calling that person or writing them an email, it's such a game changer when you can say, "Hey, whatever. I saw that you said this, or people like you say these things, or, I just put the problem in front of them
Yep.
and then go into whatever I do, right?
Yeah.
And that makes such a huge difference, inbound or outbound. Like it doesn't
Yep.
matter. And I want to be respectful to the time that we have. I have final question for you. What is your favorite call to action?
Mm-mm. My favorite call to action is one that gives more value, that thanks them for getting to that point. Like if they got there, they're obviously interested. So give them everything, give them more. And this has changed recently. I'll be very clear. I worked with Megan Bowen on this and you heard it on the podcast. If you listen, like she's got it down so well that like that is the call to action. Because when we say like, oh, to buy from me, to book from me, like that's not a call to action. Like they already are
Mm.
going to do that if they want to. You don't have to remind them to do that. You have to make it easy for them, but you don't have to remind them. That call to action is, hey, if you learned something here, if you like this, here is the resource I cited. Here is the link to the quota calculator at Quota Path, right? Or commission calculator. Like just give them something. It can be free, but they can made it that far. So give them the thing that got them there. Now that thing doesn't have to be your thing, you know? And so I think it's just, we got to be careful on the call to action, but I would say the favorite call to action is one that gives them a thank you for coming that far and delivers more value for making it that far. Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a play from a playbook that is kind of a long-term orient, that is oriented towards they're going to become my
Value.
customers sooner or later,
Yep.
right? And that's kind of my pet peeve with the what sales looks like today, which is
Yeah.
I have to book you on a call or I'm not going to get paid.
Mhm.
And I understand that notion, but I think it's hurting more than it's bringing value, or rather,
Yeah.
like it's bringing results. But I just prefer. I recently learned that, like in the past, let's say a year or so, I learned that putting a lead magnet, let's call them a lead magnet, into a CTA
Yeah.
instead of asking for a meeting time, interest, whatever, is far more effective than asking for like the alternative.
Yes.
And so that's what I try to do whenever I reach out to somebody. Like,
Yeah.
can I give them something instead of ask for something? And it
Yeah.
has proven to be a
I would
very
say also like don't do man, I like your strategy. I also get these DMs that are automated from people
mm,
who just dump on you, right? They're like, thanks for connecting to me. I read a weekly newsletter. It's amazing. Like, look at this article. Go like it right now. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Slow down. Like, just let
yeah,
me go figure that out. Like, because
mm,
it's always just like the most basic thing in life. Like, what you said is if you are the attractive person in high school or whatever college, you don't walk around and say, by the way, if you want to date me, just text me.
yeah, that's right.
And people know, they'll know, and they'll say, hey, I like you, and I want to slide into your DMs. You won't have to be like,
Mm,
you be putting up blockades for that stuff. And that is
exactly.
the hardest thing, is to be patient enough, because we all want revenue. We want it now. I do too. I do too. But, and I say, but there are days, I'd say lately, and I'll close with this too, because we're running out of time. More days or not, I doubt myself with content. I'm making the right adjustments to get there. I too have fallen down, right? 2.5 million impressions the last year in LinkedIn. I had 9, 10 million consistently, right? So Also realize that there will become times in your journey, well, you can even run $1 million a year company that does LinkedIn where your LinkedIn's not performing. And so you
Yeah.
got to realize that not every post is going to be a banger. Most of them won't be. It's just like living. Not every day is going to be fucking amazing. You just got to be consistent enough so when the amazing days come, you're fucking ready.
You're right. Yeah. Look, man, this was a huge pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on,
Thank
sharing your
you.
expertise. I'll keep following you. I'll keep learning from you, and hopefully you'll get to where you want to go. I'll get to where I want to go.
We're
And
going. There's not a hope. We don't
true.
hope,
You're right.
brother. We're doing it.
You're right.
You're
You're
on the
right.
way. I'm super proud of you, and I'm super proud to see the progress you've made. Look at your smile.
Thanks. Well, it's cool, and to be honest, as a podcast host, I don't get asked those things, and I don't get those comments back. So it really makes a difference. I appreciate that.